Okay, I'm not sure if this is getting both of us in here. Here we go. We're going to start working on a little project, right, Steve?
Yes, we are.
And the whole purpose of this is so we can run our Starlink on 12 volt without having to go from DC to AC to DC or running it through an inverter. Because the great thing is our Starlink is now able to do roam in motion as we go down the road. So while we travel through like Canada and up to Alaska where there are no cell phone signals, we will still have our Starlink going.
Yes.
So we did some research, right?
Yes, we did. And we found out that we can buy a 12 volt inverter, I guess, or charger.
No, a power block from Starlink, directly from them. It's made for it.
Yes.
There's some aftermarket ones that people have scabbed together that you can buy. And we thought about buying one of those, but we decided to go directly with the Starlink product. And because of the high amount of amps that this thing draws and what it puts out, we wanted to be sure to put in all good 12 AWG, 12 gauge wiring. Mm-hmm. So when you order this from Starlink, it comes with the cord that plugs into the router, which also powers the dish. The other end of this 12 volt power block, or power source maybe, is an XT60 connector with an XT60 cord, which is great. Nice big heavy cord. But when they send it to you, that's all it is. You have nowhere to plug this thing in to get the power. They leave it up to you to devise the next step. Now, some people talked about just cut this off, spread out the wires, add some little, what do you call those links?
I forget the name.
The little circle fittings at the end. Ring connectors. Yeah. And they've just done that. Well, that's kind of dangerous because you should have a fuse on any type of a connection. So we decided we will get the proper fittings and wires and connectors and everything else, because not only do we want to connect this to our battery, we want to be able to plug it and unplug it, because we do bring our Starlink into the house to run our home internet system. So we ordered this little outlet that we can mount in our motorhome, has a little cap on it even, that we can mount in the motorhome up near the bunk where we're going to have the Starlink riding in our skylight. Incidentally, I'll film later, the Starlink will be very secure on stretcher tension bars in our skylight to hold it in place when we go down the road. So this little outlet is going to be mounted up in our top bunk near the Starlink where this power supply and the Starlink is going to be. There's a short distance of cord here, and we have a connector. Well, we decided, do we want to plug and unplug this thing every time we want it on and off? That's not good for cords to plug and unplug. So the next thing that we are going to put in line is a switch. And this has a little rubber casing to go over it, a black cover, so we don't have to look at a ugly silver toggle. So mounted up on the bunk in our motorhome, we've already previewed out where it's going to go. We'll show that later. We'll have an outlet and next to it a switch. All these wires will be hidden behind a panel. From this fitting now, we need to go down 5 feet into the lower compartment where our batteries are located for the coach of the motorhome. So we have 5 feet worth of cable with fitting on each end. And we do have an opening already in that space that has been filled with foam that we found out we can just drill right through and poke the wire through to access the bottom compartment where our 12 volt batteries are. Actually, there are 2 6 volt batteries hooked
in series.
Okay, so now we get down to where we want to fuse this before we hook it onto the batteries. So here we're running to this next connection. The problem is the only way we could order this is with a female or a male and a male, correct?
Correct.
So we did have to order this little male-to-male connector to go right in here in this line. We didn't have a choice. To get one of these in 12 gauge. So down here, there's a little fuse online. You can put in either a 20 amp or a 30 amp. We're going to go with the 20. And down on this end is a whole different kind of connector. This is where we're going to cut it off and make ring terminal connections. One that's going to go to the power supply by a big fuse block that we already have in our compartment where our batteries are, and the other one's going to go to a ground, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the next step is to chop this off, correctly attach the ring terminals, and shrink tube them into place. And that's where Steve comes in. I do all the filming and the talking. Steve does all the work, right?
Okay.
That's why we make such a good team here. Okay. Okay, Steve's going to take care of disposing the end of this wire here, both ends, snipping them off. And these are the ring terminals he's using, and they are 10 or 12 gauge terminals. Going to strip back the wires a little bit. Give him a little twist. And now, throughout all the many years of Steve's experience of doing tons of automotive type repairs and maintenance issues, he always puts dielectric grease on every fitting that he changes on our motorhomes or cars. It's very important for corrosion, moisture, dampness. So he always uses dielectric grease. Now, what are you doing?
Now I'm going to crimp it.
Okay, and this is a crimping tool?
This is a crimping
It's
tool.
better than your stripping tool, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to give it a tug, tug, tug.
You can.
There, we'll let him do the other one first. Then he'll test them both. So he has the dielectric grease on. He has them tucked way in, nice and deep. Now he's going to do a good solid crimp so they won't come apart. Now one of these will be hooking to that fuse post by our batteries, by the big block fuse, and then the other one is going to go on a ground that we have in that same general area in the motorhome chamber.
Now I'm going to, it's shrink tube.
These little rings have shrink tubing attached right at the connection. And there's our cuckoo clock going in the background. We'll let them cool off a little bit. See how nice and shrink tight they are? Okay, and while he was doing that, I took the time to make all of our connections. Here's that little male-to-male connector. And here is our 5-foot length that needs to get from the top where the outlet's going down to the battery area. Here's going to be our on and off switch that will be covered later with a little rubber cover. Then here is the actual outlet that's going to get mounted in the corner surface of our top bunk. This is the actual cord that came from Starlink going to the power box. And this is 12 volt DC to 12 volt DC. The one that comes originally with Starlink is a 12 volt DC box that converts it over to 120 volt AC household current. So when we do want to plug in our Starlink to household current, we use the other block. When we want to be 12 volt to 12 volt, we use this block. And then this is the cord that the end of this plugs into the modem that came from Starlink. Now, some people might just say to us, why don't you just run an inverter? Well, we do have an inverter, but there's always a parasitic phantom draw running an inverter. And also, as we're driving down the road, the inverter is powering up the entire motorhome, and we just need one little outlet going. So that's why we're going to go with this setup. And I think it's going to make our travels much more pleasurable to have the 12-volt setup for it, even when we're boondocking, because now we're not running an inverter, which is also drawing loads. We're able to run it directly off our 12-volt system. And when our house batteries get a little low, we are able to plug in our motorhome to our Blue Eddy power station, which is pure sine inverter, to run this. If we were just running off a little plug-in inverter, we would have to have pure sine. And the one on our motorhome that comes factory original OEM is not pure sine.
Correct.
So this is our best situation other than upgrading to a big pure sine inverter and running it all the time, which we really don't want to do. So our next step will be to go out and kind of try this all out after Steve hooks it up to the batteries before we go fishing this all through the wall. It's always best to double check. And Nick, did he do a good job? Hey, supervisor. He's just worried about going up to eat supper. So I think we have to go now and feed the dog.